This evening, first up, a man stabbed to death with a pair of scissors on a Georgetown street. The suspect fled on a bicycle and is still out there tonight. Police are searching and CCTV cameras may hold the key. Then dozens of families left homeless, their belongings scattered on the roadside. A court-ordered eviction at Friendship East Bank Demerara has left more than 50 farming families with nowhere to go and nothing but heartbreak. Plus, a pandemic not of disease but of gangs. President Ali sounds the alarm over the growing presence of gang activities in Caribbean secondary schools and calls for urgent action. Meanwhile, the Court of Appeal slams the door shut on the Mohamed extradition appeal, calling it without merit and ordering the opposition leader and his father to pay $3 million in costs. And Trump is calling the war against Iran a victory, but members of his own administration aren't so sure. Tonight, the cracks inside the White House are starting to show. Those stories and more coming up. Stay with us. Welcome to this broadcast of Channel 2's Headline News Update for March 18, 2026. I am Bibi Bacchus. Thank you for joining us. First up, police have launched a manhunt following a fatal stabbing in Georgetown that left a 56-year-old man dead on Tuesday evening. Investigators in Regional Division 4A are probing the alleged murder of Michael Dazzle, which occurred around 7:30 p.m. at Leopold and Cross Streets, Working-Ross. Dazzle, who had no fixed place of abode, reportedly died after being stabbed multiple times during a confrontation. Preliminary reports indicate that the suspect was riding a bicycle along Cross Street when he became involved in an altercation with the victim, who was standing in an alleyway. During the dispute, the suspect allegedly armed himself with a pair of scissors and attacked Dazzle. The injured man reportedly attempted to flee but collapsed a short distance away. Emergency medical technicians responded, and a doctor from the Georgetown Public Hospital Corporation pronounced him dead at the scene. Police later recovered a pair of scissors believed to be the murder weapon, along with blood-stained clothing and a bicycle from a location linked to the suspect. CCTV footage from the area is being reviewed as part of the investigation. The suspect remains at large as police continue their search. Dazzle's body has been taken to the Memorial Gardens Funeral Home, where a post-mortem examination is pending. On a different note, more than 1,000 acres of farmland at Friendship East Bank Demerara have become the center of a bitter dispute as a court-ordered eviction left dozens of families homeless and their livelihoods in ruins. The operation, carried out on Tuesday, saw heavily armed ranks of the Ghana Police Force and court-martials moving into the community to remove over 60 farmers and residents who have occupied and cultivated the land for decades. Several homes were demolished, with furniture, appliances, and personal belongings left scattered along the roadway. Residents said they were given only days' notice to vacate the lands and accused a private entity of claiming ownership of property they have long depended on for farming and living.
Today I hearing that Rutherford, which was our surveyor, where he take some money from us, 1.2 million and kite away for us when they're looking after this place. Now I hearing he is the owner and his son is part of it. I never see the son. I don't even know what the son look like. So I don't know how they could become this parcel of the land for them. Because what will happen to the people that living on this land? I have a piece behind there. I don't know what they're going to do because me intend giving it up.
Many insist they are not prepared to leave without a fight. According to reports, more than 50 families have been affected, including small businesses, operators, and livestock farmers. The land is reportedly owned by Rosel de Leon Investment Limited, which obtained legal title in 2022, paving the way for the recent court action. However, the occupants are appealing for a fair resolution, noting that the area is their home and that some also operate small businesses there.
I know the history of this land. Nobody can fool me. And my concern is today is that I want the relevant authority to come in this place and look at the amount of single mother and children that is in this place here and just have a small thing. Some of them now knocking up a thing.
This affect me very much bad. I got 120 pig on the place, right? Plantain, cassava, coconut, that bearing, and they got to give up the place now. That's affected me very much.
The eviction has sparked widespread concerns over land ownership practices, with calls for reforms to ensure fairness for citizens who have lived and worked on the land for generations. Moving on, classrooms across the Caribbean are facing a new and dangerous challenge: gang activities among students, a trend President Dr. Mohamed says must be urgently addressed. The president has raised an alarm over the increasing presence of gangs in secondary schools across the Caribbean, warning that the trend poses a serious threat to the region's future security. Speaking at the Ghana Prison Service Senior Officers Conference 2026 at the Georgetown Conference Center, the president described the issue as a pandemic of gangs and called for urgent, coordinated action. He stressed that tackling the problem requires the involvement of schools, families, religious organizations, and community leaders to identify and support at-risk youths before they become involved in criminal activity. President Ali explained that crime prevention must focus on addressing root causes such as poverty, trauma, broken homes, and lack of positive role models. He emphasized that early intervention in schools and communities is key to steering young people away from crime and potential incarceration. The president also underscored the role of civil society and community networks in identifying vulnerable households and providing guidance and support to young people. He urged a collective approach to safeguarding the region's youth, noting that effective crime prevention must begin long before individuals enter the justice system. Stick around when we return. Court rejects bias claims, clears path from Mohamed extradition case, and hospital takes legal action as vendor congestion threatens emergency access.
Good girl forget things.
What's the problem, Granny?
I want money for borrow for those surgery. I was dancing and I fall and fracture my hip.
If you need some quick money, you should check Lender's Jewelry and Pawn Shop.
Lender's Jewelry and Pawn Shop, Lot 238 South Road Border, Georgetown. Get jewelry made to order in just 72 hours. We also accept vehicles. Lender's, best rates, longest payback period.
Boys, I get through. Plus, I could dance again.
Lender's Jewelry and Pawn Shop.
Welcome back. A major legal battle over alleged political interference in a high-profile extradition case has been decisively shut down, with Ghana's Court of Appeal ruling that there was no bias in the government's actions. The court on Tuesday dismissed appeals filed by the opposition leader Extradition Mohamed and his father Nazar Mohamed, upholding an earlier High Court decision violating the authority to proceed issued by Home Affairs Minister Juanit Waldron, which allows extradition proceedings requested by the United States to proceed. Delivering the ruling, Acting Chancellor Roxanne George said the appeal had absolutely no merit, noting that the minister's role in issuing the authority to proceed is administrative, not judicial, and therefore does not attract claims of bias. Court also found no evidence that legal advice provided by Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs Anna Nandalal was compromised. The Mohammeds had argued that political rivalry tainted the process, but the court ruled that being political opponents does not in itself establish bad faith or unlawful bias. It further warned that accepting such arguments could prevent any minister from handling extradition matters involving political figures. The decision clears the way for ongoing extradition proceedings before the magistrate's court. The Court of Appeal further ordered the Mohameds to pay a total of $3 million in costs, with $1.5 million awarded to Minister Warren and $1.5 million to Attorney General Anil Nandalau. The two men are wanted in the United States, where they face allegations of fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion linked to gold exports. Meanwhile, the case continues to unfold in court, with testimony raising questions about record keeping at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, though prosecutors maintain all required evidence has been properly submitted. When the extradition proceedings concluded today, the matter was adjourned for 3 days due to illness, religious observance, and scheduling conflicts, despite the court proceeding in the absence of one defense attorney. In other news, a growing standoff over vendors surrounding the Georgetown Public Hospital Corporation has escalated to the courts, with the health officials warning that blocked access could put lives at risk. GPHC has filed a fixed date application in the High Court, seeking orders compelling the Georgetown Mayor and City Council to remove vendors and other obstructions from key streets around the facility, including Lamaha, East, Middle, and New Market Streets. According to court documents, the hospital argues that the long-standing presence of stalls, carts, and other encumbrances has severely disrupted operations, particularly emergency access and the movement of patients and staff. It also raised concerns about unsanitary conditions, citing garbage and debris left behind by vendors. GPHC said repeated efforts since 2024 to address the issue, including multiple letters and a final warning issued in January 2026, have yielded no meaningful results. While City Hall had indicated a willingness to find an amicable solution, the hospital claims no action followed. The hospital contended that City Hall has failed to enforce its statutory duties under municipal laws to keep public roads and pavements clear, describing the obligation as non-discretionary. Unable to act directly against individual vendors, GPHC is asking the court to compel municipal authorities to enforce the law. The hospital maintains that clearing the area is critical, not only for its operations, but for public safety. The matter is expected to be heard in the High Court in the coming weeks. Don't go away after the break. Colombia's Petro accuses Ecuador of bombing near border, and China transition to electric vehicles softens the effect of the Iran war.
Good girl forget things.
What's the problem, Granny?
I want money for borrow for those surgery. I was dancing and I fall and fracture my hip.
If you need some quick money, you should check Lender's Jewelry and Pawn Shop.
Lender's Jewelry and Pawn Shop, lot 238 South Road Border, Georgetown. Get jewelry made to order in just 72 hours. We also accept vehicles. Lenders, best rates, longest payback period.
Boys, I get through. Plus, I could dance again.
Lender's Jewelry and Pawn Shop.
Welcome back. Now we take a look at what's happening in the region and around the world.
Good evening, I'm Dominic Gittins. Tonight, the U.S. Supreme Court will hear arguments on ending protection for more than 350,000 Haitians. Colombia accused Ecuador of a deadly cross-border strike. Divisions emerge in Washington over the Iran war, and rising oil prices test global economies. We begin with Haiti. The U.S. Supreme Court will hear arguments in April on whether to end temporary protected status for more than 350,000 Haitians. Lawyers from TPS holders warned deportation could return migrants to severe violence, poverty, and instability in Haiti, where gangs control large areas and over 1 million people are displaced. The court's decision keeps current protection in place for now, as legal challenges continue against the administration plans to terminate the program. Colombia's president is accusing Ecuador of killing 27 people in a bombing raid against drug trafficking at their shared border. Ecuador denies this and insists all of the strikes happen on its own territory. Al Jazeera's Alessandro Rampieti reports.
Parts of an explosive device found in a coca field near Ipiales, southern Colombia. What authorities say is the first evidence of a possible cross-border attack from Ecuador. The accusation comes from Colombia's president himself, who says 27 charred bodies were found in the area, though no proof has been presented.
Bombs have been found. A bomb dropped from an aeroplane. We're going to investigate thoroughly how this happened right on the border with Ecuador, which somewhat confirms my suspicion, but we have to investigate it thoroughly. I asked Trump to act, to call the president of Ecuador. We don't want to go to war.
In a post on social media, Ecuador's President Daniel Noboa rejected the claims, saying all bombings are taking place in Ecuador, targeting drug trafficking groups and accusing Colombia of allowing armed organizations to spill across the border. This comes as Ecuador ramps up a major military campaign, deploying more than 75,000 police and soldiers across its most violent provinces with U.S. support. Authorities have imposed curfews as part of what they call a new phase in their war on criminal gangs. Last week, Ecuador and the United States signed an agreement to open an FBI office in the country.
Security cooperation between the United States and Ecuador reaches a very important milestone with the signing of a memorandum of understanding that formalizes the permanent presence of the FBI for the first time in this country and establishes a new joint unit between the FBI and the Ecuadorian police.
Tensions have been high between the two countries since January, when Ecuador imposed a new security tariff on Colombian goods, triggering a trade dispute. Ecuador accuses Colombia of not doing enough to control their shared 600-kilometer frontier, where armed groups, drug traffickers, and illegal mining networks operate on both sides. With no formal confirmation from the Ministry of Defense, the claims remain disputed for now. And with tensions already high and a bombing campaign underway, this dispute is raising the stakes on both sides of the border. Alessandro Rampietti, Al Jazeera, Bogotá.
President Donald Trump has repeatedly tried to paint the US-Israeli war against Iran as a success, but he faces dissent inside his own administration. Al Jazeera's John Holman reports.
The first senior official has resigned from President Trump's administration over Iran. Joe Kent, head of the National Counterterrorism Center. His resignation letter read, "Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation, and it's clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful America lobby." Kent was a retired Special Forces soldier whose job was to oversee US intelligence on terrorist threats. But perhaps more significantly, he was also a Trump loyalist. The president picked him for the role. Kent called the January 6 rioters political prisoners, for example. His resignation illustrates some of the unease in Trump's MAGA base about the US starting a foreign conflict. Other MAGA figureheads like Tucker Carlson have also breathed dissent. But Trump brushed Kent's resignation off.
When I read his statement, I realized that it's a good thing that he's out, because he said that Iran was not a threat. Iran was a threat. Every country realized what a threat Iran was.
Trump also responded on Tuesday to Israel's killing of Iran's national security chief, Ali Larijani, albeit before his death was confirmed on Iranian state TV.
A lot of people say their actual top was killed yesterday, along with somebody else who was responsible for the killing, the man that was responsible for the killing of 32,000 people over the last 2 weeks.
The other man President Trump was referring to was the commander of the Basij paramilitary force, also assassinated. But even though Trump didn't seem to know either of their names, Ali Larijani was important, not just as a leader of the Iranian regime, but as a veteran politician with the clout to be able to negotiate with the US should peace talks ensue. Now Israel's assassinated him, it's possible that harder line figures could take his place. That could spell bad, not good news for the US. John Holman, Al Jazeera, Washington, D.C.
As the war in Iran pushes global oil prices higher, many economies are coming under increasing pressure. China is one of the world's largest oil importers, but remains heavily dependent on supplies from the Gulf. But the impact on the conflict is being cushioned by the country's accelerated shift to electric vehicles. Al Jazeera's Katrina Yu reports.
For 12 hours a day, Liu Xiaolu drives this truck delivering goods around Beijing. With conflict in the Middle East pushing up oil and petrol prices, he's glad his vehicle is battery-powered.
Now there is a war in Iran. The price of petrol is getting more and more expensive. Everywhere it's the same. It's better to have an electric truck.
China is one of the world's largest oil importers and relies heavily on supplies from the Gulf. Beijing has instructed refiners to limit exports of gasoline and diesel and raised price caps on petrol to conserve supply. But in China, millions of drivers no longer rely on petrol, insulating them from sudden price spikes. 1 in 4 new heavy vehicle sales and half of all new car sales are electric. Before the Iran war, China's demand for transport fuels was already peaking, with gasoline use plateauing and demand for diesel starting to decline as electric trucks took off. The country is still exposed to global oil markets, especially for the construction and manufacturing industries, as well as aviation and petrochemicals. Up to 50% of China's crude oil imports come from the Middle East, and most of it passes through the Strait of Hormuz. Chinese officials have called for a ceasefire and a return to diplomacy, while trying to leverage Beijing's strong ties to Iran to secure safe passage for its tankers through the strait.
This is a war that should never have happened, and one that benefits no party.
But when it comes to everyday transport, China's electric vehicle fleet is estimated to have saved more than 1 million barrels per day of oil. As the Iran war pushes energy markets into turmoil, the electric transition is helping to cushion the blow. Katrina Yu, Al Jazeera, Beijing.
Thanks, Dominique. This brings us to the end of our regional and global news coverage. Up next is the 3-day weather forecast. And that's it to be 2 Headline News for this Wednesday evening. As we take our leave, we invite you to follow us on Facebook and YouTube. You can tune in tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. for a rebroadcast and at 7 p.m. for more news. Until then, please take care of yourself and each other.